there's a lot to be said about that, because you have the parents who are taking care of their children going through cancer, or family members taking care of their loved ones. And then you have the patients themselves, but I don't think there's a whole lot of conversation going on with the mental health side of things.
No, and certainly, I mean, you and I were talking offline before we started recording about this very issue. You've got a conference or a summit coming up here, and I'll let you talk about what that is. But you're going to dedicate 90 minutes of that that summit to this topic, which is family support. And I, as a family systems counselor, I have a heart for that, obviously. But I think it's really important not only to attend to, say, the younger generation who may be going through college and their parents are the primary line of support, but then you skip forward a little bit in the age and you look at people in their late 20s or early 30s, perhaps, who have young families and have spouses and children, young children, and the psychological toll that it takes on those, I don't want to call them ancillary or periphery, but the adjuncts in the identified patient's life are almost as important, if not more important, than the patient, him or herself. So yeah, speak to that and what you're discovering along the way, and how maybe people can help too.
Yeah, well, we had our second planning call today with one of the, so one of our $5,000 recipients. She's a strong advocate for the foundation, obviously, and then her dad as well. So they, her dad actually sits on our board as a donor relations manager now. So they're going to have a session just between the two of them on, what him as a parent had to learn to delegate with his job and have other people kind of do his job while he took care of his daughter. Yeah. So, even in my journey as well, like my parents and we never talked about how we felt,
and there's got to be a ton of fear at the root of all that too, because not only just is it uncertain, but, and I teach emotions for a living, really. And if anybody's listened to this podcast for any length of time, that I talk about how important emotions are as an adaptive function to our livelihood, and fear's function is to tell us that there's a threat or a danger present. So people have fear based on uncertainty just because they don't know and they can't predict. And we in the West are not great at tolerating uncertainty. But also with a cancer diagnosis, there is an absolute legitimate an absolute legitimate threat present, which is the threat of loss of life, or incapacitation, or loss of finances because it's very expensive to go through the process. Alteration of one's own career path, like loss of hopes and dreams. Like these are very, very scary, highly overwhelming concepts that we already, if we as a citizenry are not in touch with our emotions, can overwhelm us very quickly, because if we're already not good at navigating emotions on a low level, big giant emotions, we're going to be terrible at dealing with. And so fear is one. I'm certain that sadness is another, because the expected losses that I just listed off, these are all really important emotions, and if you're not good at talking about them, then you're not good at dealing with them, managing them, working through them. And as you said, if as dudes in particular, we're terrible at dealing with emotions anyway, because we're all taught as boys that boys don't cry, and boys aren't scared, and pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and just bury it, bottle it up. And what ends up happening neurologically is all that the cortisol, the dopamine, the epinephrine, the norepinephrine, the serotonin, they all end up going somewhere. They go into our cells. It becomes very toxic for our body on a physiological level and on a psychological level. If we're not allowing that energetic emotional flow, then we end up blowing up on people. We internalize, or we turn to substance abuse to continue stuffing it down, or to compensate or avoid. And so we end up with these very unhealthy coping mechanisms if we don't face it head on. And it sounds like this is what you guys are trying to do now, is like bring it to the forefront.
Yeah, 100%. And that was kind of a surprise, because I started talking about it on our call today, and I started getting emotional about it. Because I went
all
through,
these years later.
Yeah. Just because, I mean, I've come to terms with the, pretty much majority of it. I would say that the bike kind of saved my life, because whenever I've had even though I had to suffer on the bike to do like a 60 or 100-mile bike ride during my train, not during actual race day, but for me, my Zen, I always found that through cycling. For me, the pedaling was my meditation. And I knew that whenever I finished a bike ride, I pretty much vetted out all my problems. Like sometimes I'd be doing a triathlon, and I'd have, this is like after when I was in, years in a remission, I would have something that bothered me from work, and I'd drive to Sacramento, and I'd be thinking about, I'd be swimming on the swim, and I'd be thinking about it. But by the time I got out of the water, like that, I would have resolved that issue, because I just sorted everything out on that swim. And because swimming is very meditative, because it's,
it's rhythmic
on one side, breathing on. And so, learning these various coping mechanisms, breathing and finding some sort of state of flow, whether it's just straight up meditation or cycling, because our thoughts can consume us if we don't act on them, if we don't put some sort of action to them as well. But I mean, to your point with mental health, I think we all need an outlet. That's why you have like these creative geniuses out there, like artistic geniuses that don't have a lot to say, but what they put down on paper or what they put down on
processing
canvas is genius, and that's their self-expression. So I think that I started to develop a campaign like survivorship and as an expression, but it's survivorship as a lifestyle now. But so on the back of our My Hometown Hero shirts, we have like the Om sign, we have a silhouette of a woman running, and silhouette of a dude doing an iron cross on the skis. So it's whatever you interpret it to be, but you have to find your Zen. You got to find what centers you, and I think just something as simple as walking away from finding your own place of solitude to where you can process the day and do that routinely. Because it doesn't seem like a lot at first, but it's you're conditioning yourself. You're training yourself into a new way of being.
I couldn't agree more. And I have a personal testimony that two of them actually. One is baseball. I played baseball on Sundays in adult league for years and years and years. And the other is snowboarding. And I still try to get out and play with the guys. We're not going to play a league this year because it's COVID. But also my body's breaking down. I can't do baseball anymore. I could do snowboarding, but I haven't done snowboarding for about 5 years. And when I'm snowboarding, it's just me in the snow, and I'm going down the hill, and I got my headphones in. And it's exactly what you just described with the bike. Whatever problems are in my head, I work through. And my testimony here is that in the years that I didn't get those things, either from surgery or from being too busy or whatever, I was a wreck. And now I'm looking back, and in the last several months, I haven't really had, I could even say years, I haven't really had an escape. And now noticing, I honestly did not even reflect on this until you just mentioned it now. So here I am bearing my soul to the public. I need to get that back. I need to find something. I've been an avid home brewer for like 10 years, and beer brewing for a while was it. Like I'd just sit there and stare at boiling water, and I'd organize my tool shop or whatever it was. Well, but now I brew beer while I'm tending to other things. And that's not a Zen state. You don't go bike riding while grocery shopping. It's like, that doesn't count, right? It's multitasking. And we all know that multitasking isn't a thing. We just talk like it's a thing. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I hope that if the listening audience is hearing this and you realize that you had the thing and now it's gone, or it's transitioning into something else, because we all have seasons of life too. We can't just continually do the athletic activity forever, because, bodies wear out and break down. We have to shift gears sometimes. I may have to take up puzzle making or something like that, but something, maybe it's podcasting, but something needs to occupy that time so that we do have space to process through the very difficult topics that are rolling around in our head. And there's a lot of difficult topics these days in the face of global pandemic, civil unrest, and then we have our lack of outlets with sports and entertainment that have disappeared from culture, by and large, and that's a big problem. So, no wonder mental illness is on the rise and people are frustrated and lashing out. So I would invite the listening audience, as Danny suggested, like find your zen. If it's bicycling, if it's swimming, if it's walking, if it's pickleball, whatever the rhythmic activity is that just gets you to move through stuff rather than being in a stuck space. I really invite everybody to explore that. Thanks for bringing that up, man. And like on a personal level, thank you for illuminating that. Cause honestly, I don't think I'd considered it. I was just like, yeah, I'd like to go snowboarding sometime, but man, it's really important. It's really important.
Yeah. Well, I'm not like an expert on Buddha, but I do kind of read stuff here and there. And I think it's finding joy in the mundane.
Mm-hmm.
It's 100% true because, I mean, running. I mean, you running something that you kind of condition yourself to like really enjoy it. Like for me, if I have a bad day, I don't feel like running. I go out and run anyway because I know I'm going to feel great afterwards.
Precisely. My wife does that actually. She just took up running about a year and a half ago, and she loves it. She never thought she would, but she loves it, and she's doing all this physical fitness stuff, and I'm very proud of her. And awesome. She does. She forces herself to do it. She always feels great afterward. Yeah, good testimony. So speaking of mental health, and how we deal with it, how is yours now? If you could like maybe do a 30,000 foot view comparison of yesteryear when you're going through it, now that you've gotten some enlightenment, and what do you do these days to keep yourself sane? What did you do back then when you were going through the treatment, and how maybe has that changed a little bit?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. So last year in 2019, I knew I was coming upon the eve of my 20-year remission, and I'm a keynote speaker. So I thought, okay, if I was to bring to the stage the three biggest lessons I learned about success and getting from one thing to the next, whether it was from, being diagnosed to going through treatment through remission, anxiety and depression to wellness, and then 2.5 year recession to being to finding my dream job. It all came down to three, I call them the three disciplines of success. So it all begins with clarity. What do you want to accomplish and why is that important to you? So if I go back to wanting to go to Europe, I guess the question would be, I don't want to feel anxious anymore, So that's what I wanted to accomplish. And why is that important to me? Because I wanted to be able to live my life without less anxiety. That would be one of the things. I tell that context more deeply in my keynote, but and then from there it's okay. So there's that clarity. Then there's that commitment to the process. This is what I'm dedicated to do. How do you define success and what's necessary to achieve it? So you just figure, okay, what do I need to do to get to this next level? And then, so that's the second discipline. And the third discipline is community, because we need each other to succeed. So it has to start within first. It has to start within, clarity, commitment, and then the community, because people will help you get there. So like every single transition through my life, and it's perfect for me because it ties into my story about triathlons, because you have the swim, you have three disciplines in triathlon, right? Swim, bike, and run. But there's actually a fourth discipline. It's called transition. It's the time it takes to get to the swim to the bike and the bike to the run. 1 minute or 1 second too long in transition could cost you the race. So how we're able to develop those tools when times of adversity, come upon us, I just go back to clarity. When I can focus on my why, then the how becomes, okay, it's achievable. I just got to figure out how to do it. And that just like, for me leaving corporate, this is what I wanted to accomplish. And this is why it was important to me. I left my corporate job so I could, build a sustainable infrastructure for my foundation. And then once I had that clarity, I'm committed to the process. I'm committed to building a board. I'm committed to building a badass team. And then community is what makes it all happen. Because you get people who are attracted by I think like, I talk about personal branding